Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Real Debaters production. I'm your host, Michael Petrow. Joining me in the living room this week is Mark Cowell as we sit down to have a lovely conversation with filmmaker, extras casting director, professional baker, Shelly Anthis. Shelly Anthis is a Winnipeg film professional. This is part of our ongoing series, Manitobans Making Movies. So we got to sit down with Shelly, quiz her brain about what goes into casting a role, how much accuracy they try to go for, how much care and consideration the casting department takes when trying to portray another person in a movie. Lots of fun stuff was talked about with Shelly, how Shelly got into film herself, some of the films that Shelly's made as well. It was a Shelly-a-thon. She's a lovely lady. We had a great time with her. So that's who's on the show this week. Also, item of note: as I am recording this, I am just 3 hours out of a live Q&A with Kevin Smith, Silent Bob, and me. Got to have a conversation about bringing the movies, the restaurant from the Clerks fame, to Canada as a pop-up. It's happening right now in Toronto. So everybody in Toronto that listens to the show, go on to Skip the Dishes till December 9th. You can get all the movies themed food you can think of. And they got vegan options there too. So we got to have a Q&A, a conversation about all things Kevin Smith. Was a fucking dream. The guy is a gentleman. Such a great time. Such an interesting fellow, as we all know. Like I'm not saying things that people don't already know about the guy. So that's on our Instagram page right now for you to take a look at. Just go hit the movies meet and greet tab. It's like the first little highlight item on our page there. So that's me. That's today. That was awesome. So I hope you guys enjoy it. I tried my best. It was a lot of fun. I was just having so much fun. That's the dumb smile on my face that you're seeing. And who doesn't have fun with Kevin Smith, right? Come on now. Anyways, so Kevin Smith, the show today, for anybody who's new, and you're listening to me regale about things that you're not caught up on, all things Real Debaters, you can find us at therealdebaters.ca. That's REEL for the spelling of real. The email address is therealdebaters@gmail.com if you want to send us an email address. The website's got everything there for it. It's got our cast bios, merch stand, a blog that's eventually going to get made. I know I keep talking about it. One day we'll find time to figure it out and get it going. So there's that to look forward to. Besides that, nothing else going on in the Real Debaters world to pay attention to. So without further ado, I give you me, I give you Mark, and I give you Shelly. I'll cue the reel, and you enjoy the show. Just be mindful of that while we're shooting the shit here. And I'm ready to do this. So, Shelly, thank you for coming on and being virtually in the living room of the Real Debaters. We normally do this in a very kooky living room that my wife has put together, but times of COVID, you've got to learn to adapt. So it's a pleasure meeting you from across the city through a Zoom room for the first time. But like I was saying before we started recording, it's funny that I've talked to Ian Bawa, I've talked to Doug Morrow, I've talked to Ben Williams so far, and all three of those guys I've had conversations with through the day job before I even realized that I'd actually spoken to them. And you are also one of those people who gets to fall into that category because we've emailed each other about things that you're doing on set, and then I was like, hey, I want to talk to people about locations and extras casting and casting in general, and then I don't know how I missed it. So egg on my face for that one. But we already do have somewhat of a working relationship. But I want to talk to you. It's the Shelly Show today. So I wanted to talk to you. We feel it's the easiest to start at the beginning. So what day was it? What moment was it that you were like, hey, I'd like to work in film?
Well, it didn't. It actually fell into my lap film, in a way of speaking. I had just had my son. I was always kind of asked throughout high school, like, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" Or you do like that test, and they say what category you fall into. And I remember when they gave me my results, they said you fall into too many categories. Like you could kind of do whatever. All I knew was I wanted it to be different every day. And my original goal was to become a photographer and then go travel everywhere, photographing for National Geographic. So I'd always had a bit of a keen eye for photography and kind of the juxtaposition of just taking photos. I was never really artistic in the way of drawing and coloring, but I liked organizing different things and rallies and stuff for school. And so I had my son, and I realized, you know what, I actually would like to go to college. And so I started looking into classes at Red River College in the evening time because my partner at the time worked full time during the day. And this was kind of a side adventure in photography. And so I went to go apply for the student loan for the classes, and it was denied. And they said, we actually don't cover photography and student loans. So that kind of hit the wall for me. And they said, well, you know, there's some other courses if you want to take a look. And Introduction to Media Production through Red River College was how I started to learn that, you know, the way the courses were broken down, there was like script writing, working with actors, producing, introduction to camera. And I just thought, holy crow, this kind of fills a lot of check boxes I didn't even know existed. And so I started taking classes at Red River. But the unfortunate part was we were at the old campus in the creative communications studio, and it was a lot of old school technology, like click in this button to lock your edit and then dial over to the next edit. And it
Ugh.
just seemed so out of reach to be able to learn any of that. But some of the individual classes that I started taking were really instrumental. I was able to network almost immediately and go be an extra on set and start making little movies together. But the classes started getting canceled waiting for that new campus. So then I heard about the Winnipeg Film Group and Video Pool. Actually, first about Video Pool, I always say I walked off the elevator and I should have made a turn to the right, not the left. But it was fun working on some independent projects that I was the sole creator. Video Pool is very single artistic driven, whereas the Winnipeg Film Group is more of a set setting, different hierarchies and different pieces and the moving pieces to kind of make something off paper and put it onto screen. So I inadvertently fell into it and fell in love pretty quickly, and have really loved all the different positions I've been able to take on, building my skill set for different projects.
Isn't it interesting that when you were in school and they said you check way too many boxes, and then years later you end up in an industry that's like, here's all the boxes that you can check and you fit into it, right? Like I'm in the same boat. I think, I don't know if Mark took the test, but I took the test, and they were like, there's not enough information here to kind of zero in on what you should do. So have fun exploring. And I mean, I found this media late, but nonetheless, I found it. So I do understand that, you know, I know what it's like to not check a box, essentially.
Yeah, totally. You know, my social studies teacher, she was always like one of those teachers that was really straight up and honest with me, and would kind of like talk to me on the side, like, how's things going? You know, is everything okay? And I remember her saying, like, don't worry, you know, not everybody falls into the box. I mean, nobody else didn't fall into the box this year, but you know, you're going to find your way. And the best thing I could tell you is to go to college. And so I remember actually walking in that day to go fill in the application at Red River, because you had to go there by bus. Nothing was online. If it was, I didn't have a computer at the time.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just interesting how it's all fallen into place. I hope I run into her someday.
Yeah, and then there are teachers who kind of, it might not be a huge impact, but it is like a little bit of a stepping stone along the way. I had a teacher like that too, who, like, looking back, in the same way where you're like, okay, I can blame you for giving me that line of thought or teaching me that cool little trick. And those are the teachers we love. If teachers are listening right now, we know you're going through the shit. So
it's kind of funny, Shelly, hearing your story of how you started in one path and then kind of ran into a roadblock. I don't know if you're aware, but Mike kind of ran into the same thing when he wanted to go into creative communications at Red River, and this is kind of how the podcast came to be. So similar story where ran into a couple of roadblocks, didn't get accepted, and then said, screw you, I'm taking the money and I'm going to start my own podcast and teach myself. So,
and you know what, whether it's,
I love that.
it thank you, Mark, for that. It honestly was one of the best things in my life that I've ever had the chance to do, because I was like, well, okay, I didn't get in, and I didn't get in. Honestly, we joke about this all the time, but I didn't get in because I think I was too old. I don't think I would have been good at being told things and already having too much of a worldview.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to go take my view and put it into something. And whether it's painting or photography or film or podcasting, it is about just go do it. I've felt like if you want to go make a film, just shoot shit and figure it out. If you want to make art, paint, like just keep painting until you figure it out. So it's nice that it's that way for almost everybody, right? And I don't know, whatever.
It
So
is like you do it or you don't do it. I find in life, if you say you want to do it and you don't do it, but if you say you want to do it and you do it, then you're going to make it happen. I am like such a huge, always emphasizing to people, like if you want something, you have to go after it. And kind of a model that we had growing up that my mom instilled in us was, if a door closes, you kick down that door because that door wasn't meant for you. So you need to go find another door and carry on in however you want it to be. And if it changes how it is, then that's what it is supposed to be. So I've always tried to carry that into a little bit of everything in life as much as possible.
and it's so
That
simple.
sounds like good advice.
Mm-hmm.
So
hopefully it's not an expensive door.
well, and that was built on set out of cheap materials, right?
Exactly.
So what did you find once the door for film opened for you? I'm sure you didn't really have a lot of ideas as to what department you wanted to work in, and the more we've done this podcast together, the more I start to give a shit about the end credits, more than I did before. And working with you guys in the day job and knowing how much, like, once you have a kind of an idea of the slow moving train that film is and how many people it takes to make a good film, you start to, in my opinion, and I can speak for the rest of the guys, we start to give a little bit more of a shit about how it goes. But I'm sure your first door wasn't the one you wanted. So what were you doing when you first got into film before you got into casting and locations and whatnot?
Well, actually, I was an extra.
Oh, okay.
I ended up playing a hippie on a commune on a Lifetime Network movie where it was set in the 70s. It was based on a book, We Were the Mulvaneys. And it's about a young girl living in a small town, ends up having a pretty serious altercation with somebody in her hometown. Her family, didn't want to be ashamed of her. They sent her away to go live with somebody else, and then she ended up kind of branching out on her own, ironically. And so I play a hippie on a commune there, and I remember filling in the application and getting the call right away because my hair was a lot longer. It was curlier, and it was set in the 70s, and I was like 20 at the time. And so I remember pulling in and seeing all the trucks and trailers, and I lived in Vancouver before that, and I thought, oh, I've seen these trucks and trailers before. And I remember thinking back, I always wondered what they were up to because it was kind of a wall of trucks in Vancouver that I would see. And then when I ended up moving to Winnipeg a few years later and then being on set for the first time, it was very interesting. And I was really keen on watching what everybody was doing, who was doing what. And I remember walking by a very famous actress that all I knew was Gwyneth Paltrow's mom was in the movie. And so I walked by Blythe Danner and thought she just looked so familiar to me. I said, hi, how are you? And she says, I'm great. How are you? And we kept going. And then I realized later in the scene, oh, she's the actress. Like, I want to find out what everybody's doing and what their piece is and kind of see where do I fit into it. Because I knew it wasn't just sitting and standing by and watching, although that was very good experience. For me, I've always been a self-taught self-learner. So I just soaked everything up like a sponge and then kind of looked for the next opportunity and then quickly fell into extras casting that way. I was a house manager at a Fringe Festival venue, and Carrie from Carrie Casting was there with Leia, and they said, hey, we hired you a few times. Would you be interested in coming to work on set? And then I ended up started wrangling on set. My son happened to be away for the summer, and I had some free time. So I worked my part-time job that I was, actually it was a full-time job then. And I started kind of working part-time on set and then gaining hours to join IATSE, which took several years. But yeah, it was all through extra work. So I think I fell into extras casting by way of that. But for my ultimate goal of wanting to write, direct, and produce, which I knew from right away from taking the classes at Red River and a lot of the hands-on experience that I was getting working as a volunteer production assistant. So my first time on set as a crew was a production assistant on a short film called Porcelain Dreams by Mike Reisacker. He lives in Toronto now, but I think he lives in Toronto. Maybe edit that part out. He doesn't live in Winnipeg anymore, but we've always kept in touch. and I helped cut his. So I was a production assistant. I was there helping them spray tea on the walls to make it look really degraded. It was this like psychopathic short film, blood, gore, horror, typical Winnipeg Film Group film. And then from there, I was working in the medical industry and started writing my own script from a story that was all from a stethoscope's point of view. We embedded a small camera on the inside of it. I Have Lived, which was a nearly 20-minute experimental short film. And I remember people coming to my set going, "Who organized all? Like, you have product placement. This food is amazing. The craft service is amazing. Where did this location come from?" And I was like, "Well, I just organized it all. I want to shoot my movie, and I got all you guys here." We had like 20 cast members and about 20 crew members. We shot over a weekend. We took over the Abbott Clinic, which is now I think Sussex Realty, by the art gallery, and we had that whole clinic for a weekend because I worked there and I was a medical assistant there working. And then I had made a shift to work in more kind of transient part-time work that I'd be able to walk away from because I was becoming really serious about seeking more opportunities that would actually kind of start paying the bills. But that took a little bit longer. But yeah, so my first time on set as an extra and first time as crew on a short film as a production assistant.
It's is everybody, I'm seeing this in big Hollywood and even here too as we kind of get this interview series going. Does everybody want to make their own thing at some point or another? It doesn't matter what position you're in, but do all you, because I know Jeremiah right now, who's in locations, he's crowdfunding for something and it looks amazing, and it's like, you know, my ignorant ass over here goes, "Oh, but you're in locations." That doesn't like, but it seems everybody has that creative itch in the industry, and if they can get their hands on the time and the money and the resources to do it, you know, it's fun because it's this duality of like, you're in locations, but you also want to create something. You're in makeup, but you also want to create something. Is that a common thing, or is that, you know, me just tripping over a couple people who do it?
Well, I think when I first started in film, because when I came into the union of working on my first like big budget movie that was here was category 7, and it was the second, I think they shot category 6 here and then category 7. So I was an on-set person dealing with extras. I had already worked on probably like 30 other productions out of the film group in different projects that I had created or just volunteered to work on somebody's film, literally trying to learn as much as I could. I thought everybody had the same goal, that everybody wanted to write, everybody wanted to direct, everybody had their ideas. But I found over the years it's very divided. Some people just want to be responsible for their piece, like making the costumes, shopping the food that's going to feed the crew, to securing that location, to being there all the time, looking at the oversea, to people who are definitely, it's a stepping stone to get into something else or to be able to make those connections or realize maybe that wasn't how they got into film in the first place, but they had a story, they had an idea. We've all worked on that crappy show that's like, I could have wrote better than this, or I could have directed, I would have done this, I would have done this. So if as a filmmaker, if people start thinking that way, you're not just meant to be in front of the camera or behind it. You're meant to create the content and help with that, I believe.
Yeah,
So
because
it's pretty divided.
Okay.
It's funny that you mentioned category 7 because strangely enough, one of my good friends did a really small part on that as one of the Marines in it, Martin Trudel. We always bug him about his limited short movie career. So
10 seconds of fame. Or a split second of fame as a background if you didn't have a role.
I think he actually had a line somewhere in it. He had one line, and it was very dramatic that he barked out. I don't remember what it was, but it was entertaining.
We actually are trying to have a Martin Trudel Film Festival episode where we watch all of his bit parts that he's done over the years and just dedicate the whole thing to shaming him into it and be like, so what were you trying to do during that bark, Martin? What character were you trying to
How
develop?
did Marine number 1 speak to you?
Yeah. What were you drawing on? You're not even a Marine. How did that happen? Yeah, I recognize that name actually from when I first started out.
He was sort of a pretty boy at the time and did a little bit of work, and he had a background in policing too. So
That might be where they
Okay.
pulled from.
Well, yeah, I've hired a lot of police officers and like first aid responders for various roles because a lot of times we do need to get actuals because we can't just have even if it's a person who's pretended to do it before for camera, it
yep,
just doesn't come off as the real thing. It's the response reaction to the scene and what's going on to be able to stop and go and stop, reset, go again.
that makes sense.
Which, and I'm glad you brought that up because you knocked out the question I had. Where is there any formal training for casting, or do you just fall into it? Which we now know you can fall into it. But I'm assuming that over time you develop an eye. But there's so many questions I sent you about this, and I really do want to ask them all. But let's start with the easy one. Like, do you know instantaneously whether it's an extra, Marine number one, cop number one, or even if you're involved in casting the bigger, more lead roles, is there already a discussion about I know there's a discussion of what you're wanting, but do you guys know when you see it, or does it take as long as it looks?
Yeah, well, just getting back to the formal training piece, there definitely is formal training, but I think with filmmaking, it's definitely like learning by trial and error. Sometimes you can hire that person that you think is going to be a right fit, but it might not necessarily be. I've had the opportunity to sit in and audit casting workshop that they did with Film Training Manitoba, and Deidre Bowden came. There was actors that had different scripts that they were reading in front of her, and she has done all of David Cronenberg's casting over the
Oh,
years, and now casts for his son. So to be able to kind of watch that keen eye, I've watched a lot of movies, so I've seen a lot of bad acting. I've always had that rule of thumb of I'll start watching a movie, and if it's not good, I'm shutting it off. And so when I wanted to get involved in film, my mom thought, well, that's perfect because you were always watching movies all the time. And I'm like, yeah, I was watching movies all the time. I remember sitting watching Super Channel or playing hooky and going home and watching movies. So it was just kind of the irony of falling into it. But I started kind of receiving informal mentorships right away. I created very good connections with Carrie Casting. I was able to work with Next Casting after that. I quickly worked with Jim Hebert. He does a lot of principal casting. And then I was able to assist Carmen Kodak when she first started doing casting in the city. I was her assistant for Faces in the Crowd with
oh
Julian,
yeah.
uh, yeah, Magnet. Or no, sorry, Julian Magnet was the director. Sorry, I'm thinking of Julian's character from
Um,
Nip Tuck. So
yes.
that actor was here with Mila Jovovich, and so I was able to get the actors ready, prep them. So I've had a lot of people who have hired me, producers in the city that really gave me a lot to chew on because I was taking it off of their plates, wanting to learn and never failing as I was doing it. Anyone who knows me knows I'm going to give 150% or more. I taught myself you don't have to give 200% all the time, Shelly. It's okay. Like I'm my own worst perfectionist. It's awful, but I think we can all agree on that for ourselves. And so a lot of like self-taught, just soaking up everything from my mentors, asking questions, not just sitting and thinking, oh, I wonder why they do this, wonder why they do that. I would ask those questions. Or I would really see the relationship that would grow between the casting director in the room with how their personality is maybe at a social event. When you see them, are they coming in prepared? Are they kind of hitting all these check marks that I would see the people who were hitting the check marks and getting hired and watching their work and going to set and seeing how they are, seeing how the lines are delivered. It's all a creative tug of war and pull and play and feeding off each other. And so sometimes it's not like that. You go in, you do your job, you're off, that's it. But I kind of dialed myself into a lot of the projects where I was literally learning something from everything to just hone in on my skill set, build on it, which is, I believe, over time made me a very versatile person because I know how to do a lot of the jobs. I mean, I'm not probably not the best lighting technician or anything like that, but I can creatively work with the director of photography for some of my own projects, or as the producer working with new directors, where the new director has taken me on to kind of mentor them in a way that if something doesn't see right or fit right or doesn't seem realistic of what is being portrayed or how the director is trying to pull the performance out of the actor. It's all been very self-taught, and some unique experiences have definitely come out of that. And so I guess like an example of how do you, pull the right people out of the crowd, so to speak, and kind of get them doing it. I worked on the installation that is in the Human Rights Museum. I don't know if you guys have been there, but they have the panoramic 360 room where there's
Yes. Yep.
three women are telling the story that is the women at three different age periods in her life, a Cree woman, about Mother Earth and respecting it and the different perspectives that come from being a child to a teenager to an elder and the kind of journey that that comes through. I think that really should be the last thing that anybody walks through when they go there. Go to the top, work your way down, and go into that room. There's a few of those voices that have been replaced with different voices because the people that were performing the role, the voice might not have been crass or like raspy enough or mild enough or soft enough for what was being portrayed. When you're in the box delivering the lines, and then when they've put the visual effects on and there's the different transitions and music, sometimes those pieces don't go together. And so we pulled in probably a dozen people for the voiceover auditions that sent me their audition first for me to whittle them down and give the best couple to the client for them to choose. And one of the girls that I was working with at the time, a young Indigenous teenager, she did the lines and she never told me the whole way through. She was so humble. Her like image was one of the teenagers that was on the screen that was being projected.
Oh,
And
wow.
so the
wow.
original person who had worked with the client wasn't able to get that voice out, but because I had had the experience with her and was able from the knowledge that I had at that point to give her a different direction or think of something different at that, of how that voice would come across. And her voice ended up being cast for her visuals. So that was like a super proud moment for me. First, she hadn't told me, and they told me afterwards. And I just kind of cried. I was like, that's so beautiful. Like, her voice would have been replaced otherwise. The visual is so strong. It's like the focal point of the exhibit. But it was just such an amazing, you kind of, over time, you see where people fit in. Had I not known you were a police officer, for instance, I probably would have casted you something in a role that's like that. Sometimes people look of who they are. For Micheal, he's a scriptwriter working at home. He's hammering something out. Or sometimes people look. I look like a hippie when I was 20 with long hair. So it's like people kind of can fit into it, but not everybody's going to fit that mold. Even if people look the part, they might not be able to play the part.
Yes.
And whether that's with a line or without a line, there's different variables that come into that are in some of your later questioning for sure. We'll hit on that. But
I always
it's
wondered.
always interesting.
I was going to say that must be sort of not reassuring, but if you take a picture or like a character, like you're saying, and you're actually matching the voice that ends up belonging to the person, then that must show you that clearly looking at somebody what their voice should sound like because you picked the right one out of the crowd, right? I always
Yeah, for
wondered
sure.
that. And I imagine I was just going to ask this question when I was thinking along the lines. I know it's a little tough because only one of us can really talk at a time, but it's sort of like when you listen to music. I always fancied myself that when I liked a song or a band, that I had a pretty universal ear. So when I liked something, it became popular. Whereas lots of other people, the songs they like never became popular as radio songs. And I take it that must be the same thing in your line too.
Yeah, it can definitely happen. And sometimes, I remember this one guy, I remember getting his headshot one time, and he was a very muscular person. And I thought, oh, this is going to be great. He'll be great to have, and my very first movie that after working on several films and then getting that first key position where I was the extras casting director. It was called Lockdown. It was an MMA type movie where the bad guy ends up in a prison and they basically have to fight their way out or they die in this jail, directed by Daniel Zerilli. And so it was interesting because we were looking for guards and police officers, or we were looking for prisoners. And often you could submit the same person for both things because depending on how it went. But yeah, you end up bringing people in. I remember having to do some of the casting rules for that. casting director who was doing the speaking roles ended up needing a bigger pool of people, and there were some of the nudity roles that I ended up fulfilling that and finding that came in for auditions. But they'd come in and their voice was totally off. It's like, oh damn it, this is not going to work. Like this guy needs to be like strong talking something. It's like, okay, he's just background, not just go, okay, well, he doesn't fit at all. The background have no speaking roles. So as long as they can follow the direction and not overdo it or kind of cross certain boundaries, then they're going to get invited back. They're going to be able to do it. But I know that person might not be the best coming in for speaking roles, but maybe something for voiceover later, it might work. So I think everybody has their unique skills. And unless they've kind of, blacklisted themselves or written themselves out completely out of the industry and being a part of it, there literally is something for everybody. And if you want to cross that over to crew, then that's also a really good possibility as well.
I'm guessing the skill of knowing what the public is going to like is an important skill for a casting director, not just what you like personally, but what's going to translate to a popular opinion.
Oh, for sure. And like I've been in the audition room where you're watching the performance, but it's also being recorded. And it's amazing. You can watch something and be like, oh my God, it was so beautiful. Like that's the person, and then you watch it and go, that's what happened when they were in here. Like, well, I felt the same way, or maybe there was that one person who was like, I didn't really know how it was going to translate on camera, and now that I've watched it, and then there's been those people that come in, and you're like, I don't know how this is going to pan out, and they just blow you away. They knock your socks off, and you're like, wow, this is the person, So it's a lot of that, but yeah, there's a lot of like I worked on We Were Children. I don't know if you've seen it. It's a residential school documentary and it's a docudrama as well. So Equal Vision produced it, and it was two stories that were being told of elders who were recanting their stories of when they were forced to go to residential school. And so we had to hire, like my team was responsible for hiring all the background as well as the speaking parts. And so, if it's a Hallmark movie and somebody's playing the nice girl next door versus something that's factual and needs to be right and has to be right. There was a lot of extra work that went into prepping those actors to get them ready for it, to make them realize, you're playing somebody who you have a likeness visually, and now we need to get you to the spot where you're that overbearing nun or you're that bad priest. And so that was a really interesting process to work through because there was always that, how is the elder's family going to appreciate this person that is doing this role, as well as the producers and the viewer watching it, to for them to be watching it going, this is what happened and this is how it went, for them not to differentiate that it's something that's being acted out. So there was like multi levels and layers going on in that. So it's always really interesting to be part of those, especially when it translates well, because when it does, and the person's in the audience and they're so affected that they're taking and walking away from it and doing something that makes a change in their life, then you've done your job well.
Yeah, I never
And
even
it's
considered
exciting.
that. Casting
Mm-hmm.
for sort of a historical realism as opposed to big screen pizzazz or whatever, if you will.
Yeah. It just depends on what show you're on, but there's just so many layers of different projects that come through the city and that I've personally had the chance to work on. And so that's why every project I work on, whether it's fluff, it's the movie of the week, it's the documentary of the year, or if it's my movie, I want to be learning something always. Otherwise, it starts feeling like work. Like I know it's cliche, like, oh, if you like what you do, you've never worked anything in your life. I've worked 60, 70 hours a week. I've been exhausted. But then, you're watching it and you see the end credits or you're there on set when it happens and everything unfolds. You're like, I was a part of making all this happen. And there's that renewed excitement. I've never worked on a project thinking, oh my God, I never want to do that again. There's certainly people that I've worked with that I feel like I don't know how this is going to go. Or you try to mend that bridge to be able to forge into the next project. But yeah, it's an interesting career.
That's the beauty,
Keeping
I
on my
think,
toes.
of the creative world, is that you actually have a finished product to sit back and see what you've done. Whereas a lot of work, you don't ever get that finished product to sit back and go, oh, you know what, I was part of something pretty amazing. I'm definitely
True.
envious
And
of that side.
yeah, there's a lot of projects too that I've worked on that, made it through several stages but never actually completed. And those are the hard ones too, because you just think of all the time and effort and what everybody learned, good or bad, and sometimes they just never make it to the screen. And so being able to connect with the right crew as well to make sure that everything follows through, because a lot of projects can stall out, and not just over finances, over the commitment to the project. I remember hearing, if you're going to work in film, you're going to have to love that project for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year. Like one of my short films was a baby for like 2 months. It was like, or 2 years, sorry. I would wake up every day thinking, oh yeah, this. And I'm like, you know what? I'm thinking about this too much. I just need to do it. I just need to connect with the right people and network with the right people. And then, I had to delay it one time by a year due to finances. The, the gusto was definitely there to do it, but yeah, no matter what stage it is, it's always interesting process to follow it through to the end.
I forgot I was taking care of this because you just started to talk about so many interesting things. I'm so glad that so much goes into finding the right person, and that the casting department has so much. Because I mean, you hear about it and you see it portrayed, and it's like, yeah, our job is to pick the person, and then after that, it's. But I'm glad that it's so meta for you, and that you really dig deep into it, and that you feel a responsibility of portraying the right image in the right way through the right person. And I can't imagine how painstaking it must be sometimes. Like, what would you say the percentage between like nailed it first time, or like 1,000 people later you finally found it? Like, is it an even keel? Are you more often than not like dig?
Of like the actual finding of the people.
Yes, yeah. Like, are you going through 70 people before you find the right one, more than you'd go through? Like, what is it a lottery for you? Like, I mean, you've got the eye for it. You're obviously watching it, but I'll give you, okay. What I'm ignorantly coming up with in my head here is the American Idol bullshit of all of the trial episodes where like thousands of people come through. Is that like it is for movies, where you're sitting there just painstakingly going through CV after CV, headshot after headshot, and then person after person? Can you get blinded in it, and then eureka, you find somebody? Or is it more often than not you guys know what to put in front of people, know what to put in front of you, and then you know what to pick from that?
Well, I think like the hardest thing is to bring out an actor that doesn't need to come out, because, and I say that because if I'm bringing out 100 people, there's 100 people that are like losing sleep at night, thinking, "Oh my God, I might have this part. I'm gonna do this, and this." And while it's a good exercise, especially for new directors, I've worked with a lot of directors who have worked on independent projects, and they're like, "Oh, I already know the person that I want to cast for it, and it's going to be this person and this person, but they've never met, but I think they're going to have really good chemistry." And I'll always go, "Okay, wait, like the record, you want to be a director, this is part of the process. Let's get the actors into the room. It's great exercise for the actors, for the small to medium to large group, depending on what the project calls for. And so when you're bringing each of these people into the room, they're putting a little bit of themselves into it, and you're going to take a bit of them when they come in to do it. And that's coming down from not being prepared, to getting nervous, to falling apart, to wanting to do it again, to going in the room and nailing it the first time, and you wanting to try to get a little more diversity out of it. And so when I first started out, I would bring in very few people because I don't want to waste their time. I don't want, then I quickly realized they need to come out. They need to exercise this. I started in film when there wasn't a lot of projects. There wasn't a lot of people going for auditions. The people who were going for auditions were the same people again and again and again. And the people who were wanting to go for auditions were literally, aside from, having a class or being part of a workshop, were never exercising their chops, so to speak, to get into that room. And that's really critical, because while somebody can go in and nail it for the first time, it's not going to be like that for everybody. And every opportunity is not just going to be, oh, we got that person and we nailed it, let's move on. It's not exercising the director to be able to be open to different options. But I have had the directors who have gone down the road with me through the casting process, ended up choosing somebody completely different for the role because that person brought something that they hadn't thought of. They tapped into something that they were like, whoa, how could I not have thought of that? So, but I've also been on the flip side of those big Hollywood movies coming in. And I remember casting for a very prominent casting director, getting everybody lined up for her. They wanted to see everybody. So we were bringing out 30, 40 people for each role sometimes.
Wow.
Sometimes we were seeing 100 people for a male role, giving them one script, having them come back for a different script. Because you can either go in, here's the role that we want you to read for, and verbatim read this exactly how it is, and that's for that one role. Then you're seeing 50 different people for 50 different scripts. Some people will say, here's one script for the male, here's one script for the female, here's one script for the kid. And then when they see the character being portrayed in front of them, often they've been given something that falls in the middle. You know, it's not the murderer, it's not the bad guy, it's not the housewife. It's something you start looking at the person thinking, oh, they'd be really good for Jenny, or we should maybe have her come read for Vera, and see where that person's personality falls into, to where the character falls into, give them the prelim script to go through, because then the director and myself as the casting director is not having to wrap my head around 50 different characters until you really start honing in who you want to come in for what. So each time it can be really different. A lot of times on short films, it's you're coming out to read for that role and that's what it is. On some of the bigger movies, it's, you know, it's kind of like bringing in 2 production assistants for the day, knowing you're only going to keep one, seeing how they work, whittling it down to the 2, and then go, okay, we're going to go with that person. So the casting room can also be the same way too. How's that person going to come? Are they prepared? Do they have their headshot? Do they know their lines? Have they just come in to wing it? Are they a seasoned professional? And they're, wow, they literally just fell apart in front of me. Like, I need to find the words right now to make them feel good about going for another try and leaving that audition at the door when they walk out, because it's not them, it's us. It's totally us. Like, it's whatever we're looking for. And I'm sorry you're not blue, but we need somebody who's blue. And so we're actually just going to cut the character. Now that character doesn't exist. And a lot of people, actors, have a really hard time letting go of some of those things. And just every director is going to be different. So I've had to wrap my head around a lot of different ways that people think, the way they process information, and just adapting very quickly. So I've had a lot of jobs in the past that were troubleshooting on the fly. I worked in property management. I was evicting people out of their apartments when I was 19, 20 years old, going to residential tenancies branch, like, this gang has to leave out of this apartment. They can't be here. And so just kind of, you know, maybe you're better suited to go live here. I'll hook you up with somebody else. So I think always troubleshooting and finding what works and what doesn't work is going to set you apart from everybody else in the field. And I think that's why a lot of people do like working with me, and why I like working with them, is because there literally is always something for everybody. It just might not be where they are, but helping them in that path. And I've plucked people out as extras going, you need to come in and read for this part. And they've been so nervous and so scared. I've had a few conversations. They've come in, they've bombed at it. They've come in, they've nailed at it. And some have like gone on to try different things. And I just love that. I'm like, yes, like, they're doing it, you know, they wouldn't have done that otherwise. And just like pushing that person, and then them exceeding their goals and expectations. And then that kind of is the domino effect. It trickles down. So it's amazing.
On that topic of the large pool of people auditioning for one role, is it difficult to learn skill to sort of cleanse your palette in between each person so that they don't all just blend together?
Yeah, like, each person will come in, and the great thing about it is somebody will come in, and we usually have a few minutes to debrief after they've left, and then before the next person comes in. So there's always like a little bit of a break. Some people will just sit there going, next, you next, and then they're just waiting for their emotions to be reacted. And while I've certainly had to do that as well, where there's people are coming in one after another, and then, you know, I find it's like watching Twin Peaks. unless you're really dialed into the storyline, you're going to start tuning out, but the music is going to pull you into a scene. It's going to make you pay attention. And so that actor is going to come in. They're going to do something that's like, aha, I want to see more of that, or try to push that character over the edge to take them to the furthest extreme. Although you know it's not going to be that way, it's an exercise for them as well. And so cleansing the palate sometimes people will just come in and do some crazy things and you're thinking, okay, but then for myself too, I have to go, okay, I'm leaving the auditions at the door, I'm walking out, and the next time I have them come in, i'm I'm going to know how to use my words differently or be very direct to the point, to pull the performance that you want out of them. Sometimes, and this is what I love. I don't know how I acquired the skill, but sometimes I know where they're not giving it their all, and they're doing something that you see that they can take it to the next level, and they've sat there emotional after going, I had no idea that was in me to put that into this. And they might not have gotten the part, but it's put that in them to give it their all the next time they go in and leave that audition at the door when they walk out, because it is what it is at that point. If you've done your work, if you've prepped, if you've come prepared, if you've nailed it, if you sucked at it, just the next time is going to be something different. And it's literally like that for every job as crew. It's going to be different every time. The rules will all still apply, and how you do things and troubleshoot it might be better or worse. But just always learning something from it and being able to refresh and pause and kind of reset an actor to get them back to where they were, because nerves can get the better of people.
Absolutely.
You're bringing up some stuff that I was not really focused on, but now that I know how passionate you are about getting this right and pulling out performances and knowing that how much credit you get for putting that person on the screen, and how much work goes into nurturing the character and start to finish, from reading a line to reading it in front of the camera. With the way of the world today, and that is about as far as I'm going to describe it, there's a lot of backlash about casting people who are not necessarily okay. This week, Anne Hathaway was criticized, and so was Warner Brothers, for their portrayal of her as the witch. She had missing fingers, and a group of people who have deformities made comment about it. I'm just wondering what your opinions are on the fact that you're trying so hard to create this story and to create awareness about a position, maybe, or create awareness about a character, or create awareness about an idea, and you work really hard to find the right person, only to find out that somebody can't suspend disbelief to allow for that character to do their job and act it out and show the world. So, does that come into play a lot more than it used to now, because everybody's got a smartphone?
Like not finding actual people for actual
Yes, that's
roles,
what. Yeah.
or certain requirements that are. Yeah, I guess there's like kind of two sides to that. It's and I've definitely been on both sides. I actually just had a conversation recently, which I'll get into the second part of that. But I have had to find, like, I worked on Heaven is for Real, and I did all the background casting for that. So that was a true story that was written into a book that was written into a very big Hollywood blockbuster.
Yeah, Great Kinnear, right?
So it was a scene where we had to replicate children in the sick kids ward without bringing sick kids in, because had we brought in sick kids, they would have been susceptible to picking something up. Luckily, we didn't have COVID back then, but had we put healthy kids in the bed and put makeup on them to look different, then we probably would have, like, I always feel like there's always going to be some kind of flack that somebody is going to give. And I think sometimes people don't think, sometimes it's not just a creative choice. Often it's, choices that have to be made. And kind of the second part of it is I've had to put out casting calls where I'm looking for very specific tone, skin of people that needs to be right. I've gotten emails, oh, you're racist. How come you're only looking for this? Or how come you're not looking for that? And I've had to be very frank with them, going, look, we're casting a scene of 300 people in an airport in Mumbai, India, for Percy Schneiser, a farmer who's come from white bread Saskatchewan, to go and talk on a global scale about canola and Monsanto. And that was real life. Like Percy had to do that. Christopher Walken was playing him, but I seen Percy talk at the university when he came here with his wife. And I knew the dedication and passion and behind it. So taking on a project like that, had we hired a couple hundred people and had makeup look had them look differently, we would have gotten flack for that. So I got
Totally.
flack for looking for the right people. And, I always feel like people, you're right. Anybody who has a phone is an editor, they're a writer, they're a director, and if they want to pursue those goals, that's awesome. But we're always looking for something that needs to be portrayed correctly. I've had to play the Bronx, so you need to look for a very set group of extras to play those, because the worst thing is putting somebody in front of the camera that's not accurately right for it to come off. And so in that respect, tying it back to people with disabilities and different things like that, actors are actors. People
Yes.
have had to portray people who have different ailments, who are a lack of limb or whatever it is. They're actors. That's what they're doing. And so the state of the world, I know an actor recently had to back down from a very big role that was probably one of the best roles in his life. My 13-year-old is even like, I don't understand this. Don't they know that there's two sides to this story, this? There's always going to be flack, but I think to try to get it accurately right, but to try to put somebody in a position who has the part other than making them physically exactly the same, which we would get flack for that as well. I mean, that would be horrible if we were doing that to try to match actors in that, but there's always going to be something. So people have to understand there's a lot of creative talk and meetings and prep. And, sometimes people have these projects on the burner for 2-3 years. They're trying to, put the right people in to be able to portray. And if people are walking away with, they didn't have severed fingers and I don't believe the story, then they're not looking into the creativity and they're hanging on to too much. And movies are made to shut off life and enjoy it. And if you walk away from that going, you know what, I want to go volunteer at an organization that's going to go help this and this, then that movie's done their job. If they made you upset and angry over something, then go make a change in your life and do it. That's what movies are made for. It's a diversion. And I think to try not to read in too much, unless you're culturally taking people and you're representing them in a bad way, and that's been done in the old spaghetti Western movies, then that is definitely not the right way to go about it. But I think humanity, I would like to think we've come a long way. Look at the US, a big sway in a different direction of how that's going to be. And I think movies are a diversion. They're meant to be watched. They're meant to be loved. They're meant to strike debate. I've worked on a lot of short films where people have walked out in the audience after it's on the screen. And I think, oh my God, they're walking off the screen or walking into the theater. This is horrible. And the director's like, no, it's exactly what I want them to do. They're mad. They're angry. They're going to go carry on and go do something else that's going to make a difference in their lives. So I hope that people would walk away taking that away from it.
I agree with you 100%. And we all we've had this conversation before, and I understand people's feelings, and I understand that the big screen is where it's the big screen. Everything gets portrayed on it at some point or another. And I understand the way of the world and how society and technology have yet to be good bedfellows, and we can have civil discord about stuff like this. But I have always defended that I know care and consideration are taking place in those rooms, because the last thing you want to do is put that much effort in, spend that much time, spend that much money, and then have nobody understand the artistic aspect of it and just get offended by it. And there have been situations where I don't know off the top of my head, but I know I've had the conversations where, yes, okay, maybe some more could have been done, but at the end of the day, it's always about acting. You're portraying something, and if it isn't going to get portrayed on the big screen, then there isn't going to be enough noise made about it. So can we just reason a little bit with everybody and go, yes, this might not have there might not even be people with this disease, ailment, style of something, what have you, that can play it. So then you try to get the next best, most accurate thing, and with Facebook and everything, as soon as you see it, it's insta offense. So you don't have a conversation about it. Next thing you know,
We have to
actors.
agree where that line is, though, right?
Yes. Oh, totally.
Because
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we could all agree that if we had to do it again, we wouldn't cast Fisher Stevens as the Indian guy in Short Circuit.
No, we would not.
But I mean, that's obvious, but it's a little bit different when you're taking somebody that has a less obvious issue or personality or style. Yeah, then there's actors are actors for a reason.
It's true, and like a flip side of that is like I watched Aquaman for the first time last night. Jason Momoa is a nice guy to look at. He does not breathe
Yes.
underwater in real life. That's okay. I'm okay to watch that movie. When I worked on my first feature film as an extras casting director, one of the actresses didn't want to go nude. It was a scene where it was like a biker hangout. The garage door rolls up. There's two girls dancing. They're in bikinis. There's a violent scene that happens. Anybody who's watching those movies is going to go, oh, I really wish the girl would have taken her top off. Had the body double not been hired for the nudity role, that scene would not have been there. There are certain genres of movies that require that certain element of body doubles or whatever it is. Because if I would have watched the scene, I would have went, this isn't believable. Those girls aren't, who they're portraying to be. I'm not saying all movies require nudity, but there are those certain genres of movies, and that's why they're funded. That's why I was hired. I lived for 2 months off the money that I was making from that show. I felt good about what I was doing because everybody was comfortable on camera doing it. I've been on shows though where people have been hired, like my Winnipeg guy, or sorry, The Saddest Music in the World. Sorry, I don't know if you've seen it. It's an experimental feature that Guy Madden made, and there is one of the characters, Isabella Rossellini, has an ailment. There was somebody that was hired who was credited, who was there every day, who was part of the contract and the liaising of helping that actress portray what her daily life is like, because that's what she needed to portray. Isabella wouldn't have known that otherwise. She could read about it and watch videos, but having somebody on set with you every day who is helping you become who they are to portray in their character, although the beer baroness in 1930 putting out for the best song is going to win a lifetime supply of beer was not a real thing. It could be at some year. Maybe Guy just had the year wrong. But there's certain consulting and things that happen, and those are, again, opportunities that people might not have had otherwise. They were treated with respect. They were in a contract. They were through the union. And so being able to have those opportunities, there's always going to be a flip side of the coin to it, I feel.
Oh yeah, you're not going to make everybody happy, and that's not your job. Your job is to make art and portray art as best you can. So, and I mean, people get offended by paintings, people get offended by a song, people get offended by a picture. I can be offended by a lamp if I really want to let myself get that offended. But I couldn't agree with you more. I really want to ask.
And just
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry to cut you off there for a sec, but just to reiterate too. Some people have made movies and they've gotten it wrong. And if they've walked away with, wow, we really should have did this, we really should have did that, then if they're learning from it and proceeding forth and doing something differently the next time, or incorporating different people that need to be involved for it to be right, then I think that, they're learning something. As a filmmaker, they're walking away with being able to do it better next time. And if they choose not to do it better next time, or if they just don't do it next time, then they're just not in, the right industry or something like that.
I think you really keyed in on it with a consulting role. That seems to be the way to have somebody directly involved that can explain to a professional actor that's playing the part the troubles, the tribulations, the daily life. I know my stepdaughter has autism, and there's a big movement for every time somebody with autism is represented in a movie that not about us without us is the the big key
Oh,
phrase, right? And but the without us part is just having somebody involved in the production. It doesn't have to be the actor or actress, I don't believe. I think it's just having somebody involved that can really give you some insight into that particular person.
it's so true. And I feel like it's respectful in that way. And then the whole crew as a whole sees how respectful that is. You know, I've worked on projects, a lot of Indigenous projects like the Taken series, the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women series that's done with APTN. So we've had to go through the case files with the producers and the writers and their consultants to make sure that we're matching up people in an accurate way. That if the family member was watching it, they connect right away. I know that's my loved one.
Mm.
I know this. So they've, and there's a like a smudging ceremony that happens during production, during the
Oh
pre-production,
wow.
during talking about the stories. There's a piece that happens with that, and it's because they are connected with the right people. They formed an organization for it to be the right people, and they're connecting with the elders, and so that respect and that.
Oh,
Oh,
we seem to have lost her.
I think we lost her. Hello, she's back.
Oh my god! I tried to tether off my phone, and that wouldn't work. So now I'm back on Wi-Fi again.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No worries. You of all
Yeah,
people,
Shaw.
you of all people should know, Shelly, that we can edit and chop and cut and make this all sound like it didn't even happen. I've been watching Mark's cat stick his butt in his face, so we're totally good.
What's your cat's name?
Oh, we lost Mark's audio now.
Uh-oh.
This is Simon, the hairless cat.
Hi, Simon.
Yeah, he has a hairless one, and I have a 35-pound one that might make its way onto my lap at some point. Usually at the 1.5 hour mark, cats start coming out, going, "You're making our nap go loud." So, anyways, all right.
That's
Well,
the ongoing joke in our podcast that we normally do in Mike's living room is that we know we're about to wrap up when his one cat leaves the one room and walks through the middle because it's always at the 1.5 hour mark. So
And that's funny.
he's like, wrap it up here.
which we're at a $1.07 right now, so I have a feeling he's gonna start coming in. But yeah. So, anyways, so welcome back, Shelly. We got you back here. The Wi-Fi in 2020. Elon Musk, make it free for everybody. That's my wish. Okay.
Yes.
If it's any consolation, you came back clearer and crisper and sounding better than ever.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, like I say, take two. It's always your
So
best
once
take.
more from the top.
Back to ones, everybody. And action.
I love it. Okay, so what I wanted to throw at you next, Shelly, was and I'm glad we got to talk about the seriousness that you take into casting, because I feel people need to hear that. I feel it's you know, all these departments, there's just not enough spotlight on casting and stunt doubles and all of the things that go into it, because those aren't the sexy awards. And we have this conversation a lot on this podcast, where I would love to see an award show dedicated to all of the other people that make a movie that do not get enough credit, that are just as, like, they're the heart, they're the spine, they're the frame. There's so much in there. But one day the Oscars will listen to us and take us seriously. So onto something a little bit more lighthearted here. What's a casting room like? Nerve level, stress? Is it? Are you guys very, like? Are you professional? Are you coaxing? Because you sound like a great coach. Like you are very excited when people get. They find that part in themselves and they bring it off, and it comes off the paper and you get to see it. So are you guys, straight faced, or are you a little bit more forgiving? Like, what's a room like?
The audition room is whatever we make it.
Okay.
It really is. It's I've worked on projects where it's been a very nurturing environment. The actors feel great coming in. They feel great throughout the audition. They leave. They feel like they have the part. Not everybody's going to get the part. I've been in the audition room where I've been the assistant to somebody who's casting, and it can feel very cutthroat. People come in, they read their bit, they're told to leave, and that's that. I find that's not good for anybody, but it also prepares the actor that literally anything can happen in that room. So while it's something that you can create, sometimes the project demands for it to be something different. And so I was part of a trio or a quad that was working together on a project called Frackin' Zombies, and we were trying to get
Pardon
some
me?
funding through Cineku. We actually made it quite well through some of the rounds, and we ended up not making that feature. It could come back as something else someday. But I was one of the co-writers, and a lot of the ideas of how they became zombies was my ideas. So that's an exciting, could be a short film down the road. But for that, we wanted people coming in exactly in character. They could not break character. They were told that before they arrived. We can give very detailed criteria of exactly how we want them coming, and that's to test, are they listening? Are they compliant? Are they going to listen to what we're asking of them? Are they treating it like a joke? Is it serious, you know? And so sometimes it calls for that because maybe it's the character, it's the way the director wants to approach it. I have had auditions where there's no friendly banter, you know, for docudrama series. They're coming in, often the client's there. I need to be very disconnected from how I've been with them in prep. Once I've prepped them through what they need to do, I have to walk away from that compartment of the job and put on my different hat of being serious or laid back, introducing them to everybody, not introducing them to maybe 5 or 6 people who are sitting, you know, straight faced, pens in hand, ready to watch that person perform. And if they're not ready, they're not going to get that second chance to do the reading, and they're going to have to leave exactly the way that they've left it. So we can create a variety of different environments, and that's often to get them ready, to ease them into it, or have them ready right away, see who sinks or swims in that process, and then carry on to the next level. Because when some of the big Hollywood features come in, they're not going to have that banter with the director. They're there to do a job, they're there to do it right, they're there to get it right, because they might not have that opportunity again. And sometimes maybe people who are in from coming in from out of town, doesn't matter to them. They're here to do their job. They do it. They walk away. They don't care of the wake they've left behind or the wrath for the local crew to deal with. And so it's different every time.
Is there? I always we tout the line here. Our cheesy line is where real life meets real life. Trademarked. So, but there.
I like
I'm glad you do. I'm glad you do.
I
Thanks.
want one of those shirts.
Done. We'll make it happen. But is there a lot of like finding people in you know a diamond in the rough, so to speak, to quote Aladdin? Like, is it more about you guys know the industry, you know the city, so you kind of know maybe in advance? You're like, okay, we definitely want these 4 or 5 people, or do you find a lot of needles in a haystack where you like because you say you've met people where you wanted them to come in and you're like, no, you could do this, but have you ever found somebody who was a stone cold nobody and then you were just floored by it?
Yeah, definitely. And it almost actually happens in every audition. Someone's going to knock your socks off, and somebody that you know, like as a casting director, I try not to go in with any expectations, but it's almost impossible to separate yourself from that because you are expecting a certain level of performance to come out of this actor, especially if I'm assisting somebody else or I am the casting director who needs to send these videotapes to the creative crew with no explanation of what happened. They just want to see the performance. And so I've definitely been in the audition room where you're looking for that diamond in a rough, and sometimes you don't know with what character you might be seeking it. Sometimes that diamond in the rough will find you, and that has definitely happened where you bring somebody in, maybe they're not in the right age group, maybe they're a little bit different, maybe they're just in their photo, their personality is reflecting something different than what you want, and you always want to try to take that person to somewhere different. And so I've been in the audition room where, like, wow, and try not to express that because you don't want it to throw them off their game. I remember
Yeah.
I was working as a producer and I did the casting for The Crest. It was a short film that local director, Paula Kelly, made. And it was just such a beautiful story. And we were looking for the daughter. And what the director had in mind originally, the actress that we ended up finding was completely different. But we watched her come in and we thought, how's this going to go? And she just kind of curled up in the chair and just gave this knockout performance. But the director wanted to take her in a few different angles. And so my job, and I've always been kind of good at doing it, and I know because I've had feedback and it's exciting when it happens. I know what the director is thinking as soon as they see it happen, and I know when to kind of sit back and let the director take over. Unless I'm in the room, then I'm going to try to get something else because I can edit it out later to show the actor. But it's taking the lead, getting the actor ready for everything, and then literally they come through that door, and it is what it is. They could come through falling apart. They could come through knocking our socks off. They could come through going, wow, you know what? They would be really good for this. Hey, can you go take this script and go cold read it in the hall for a little bit and come back in like 10 minutes for like a completely different character? Sometimes those people will come in really strong, and sometimes they come in weak, and they're just not resilient to the change that's demanded from them. So sometimes in a callback, you might get that performance, or you might just go, wow, that was a crazy road we just went down. It kind of led us nowhere. But often it's going to lead you somewhere that's going to add something to the story. And if your character is adding to the story, then it's, you know, the creative is like sky is the limit. Like anything is possible,
Yeah, I
which I
was.
think should always be brought into each project.
Do you see a lot of people taking liberties and kind of going off in like it, you always you see the silly scene in the movie where they're like, no, I'm gonna elaborate on this, or I'm gonna take this off the page and do what I want. Is that a faux pas? Like, just do what you're told, read what you're written, because you're saying like, can you be commanded? Can you bring it out on the fly? Can you dig deep when you need to? Do you have a toolbox full of emotions that you can pull from? These are all things that are done action, cue, on command. So if someone takes liberties with it, is that a faux pas? Is that no?
Not necessarily. Like, unless, you know, every time there's an audition and a character breakdown is put out, and that's how the actors ultimately apply. Sometimes it could just say male 30s, send your information to this role. Sometimes it could be male 30s, abandoned child, adopted by lucrative family and teens, now running a business 20. There's a lot of
Raised by
blanks
wolves.
that are kind of filled in. Yeah, exactly. You know, the command and the character of what we've asked them to commit for. And so sometimes when it's very clear cut, sometimes it can be very gray about the character. And it's like that for a purpose. We want to see what they're going to do with the character. So you almost want those liberties to happen sometimes. Sometimes in the bigger shows where it's very like, this is the script, this is exactly what we're looking for. You're coming in for this role. There isn't a lot of room for that. While there's always some creative flexibility, you know, on some of these like independent projects like Lovesick that was shot here, different features, you know, that people have been part of here, they want to see what that person's going to do with it. And if they come in, you know, really off the handle, like, whoa, this is just like way too left field, your next sentence needs to be immediately formulated. Okay, let's try it like less of this, more of that. Can you add some of this? Can you start bringing in some of this feeling? We don't want to see it right away. Hide some of this, hide some of that. Okay, go. And then, you know, they're literally having these things thrown at them. And part of it is A, how did they adapt to it? B, did they change their performance? Or is it exactly the same as when they came in? Okay, maybe they can't take direction. Let's try a third try. If you're going into a fourth or fifth try without things being changed and the actors being constantly reminded to do the exact same things, there's many things that are happening at play. Nerves, they're not hearing it correctly. They think they're changing it up, even though you're saying, let's try it like this. You can't be so, you know, don't do it like that. Don't do it like this, because that's really going to throw them out of the character that they're trying to portray. So it's always this fine finessing at a moment's notice to try to reel somebody back, push them further, or, you know, it's always this constant give and take. But we've had people come in, they change it up, they've gone somewhere different, and you know it's great. Otherwise they've come in, they've done it repeatedly again. I wouldn't strike that person as not coming in again unless they became I've had a few people go, well, I don't want to leave the room until I do it like this, and you just have to go, the audition is over. Like, the next time you come in for something, you know, maybe I'll send you some notes. That doesn't happen a lot unless somebody, it's happened a few times over. I've had to follow up with people afterwards going, look, like, you really need, you have to be open to taking the direction, because when you're on set, anything could happen, and you need to be able to adjust and be flexible at a moment's notice to change. Otherwise, the creative process is not going to go that way unless you're funding the movie and you're the producer and you're the the actor and you're going to do it how you want because you have the final say. That's a totally different thing. But I think just being flexible and open to the change and reflecting the change immediately will show the diversity that that actor has to offer. And you can't fake that and you can't hide it. And, you can act it. Well, then you're doing your job. You're acting it. But don't fake it. You have to believe what you're performing. Otherwise, it's not going to come off right. You're probably not going to get hired because they need to build in different ways on the character, not always trying to find the character within that same actor. Otherwise, it's a disservice to the story and the character if you're always having to focus on something that isn't relevant to what you're needing to get. But some projects do have that flexibility. They've hired somebody, they want to manipulate that actor over a couple of months or 3 months. I've seen it even 9 months, perfecting this character. And you watch their audition tape before, and you see the first set once the movie's edited, and you're like, whoa, like how many 180s did they do? Like, this is amazing. So not every budget will allow for that, and not everybody will have the patience for that. If you do, it's great. And that's, again, every project is going to be different. The needs are going to be different, but the rules are generally the same.
So I have a bit of a question on this. It's sort of this topic. It's all the same topic. But when you're looking for something in a movie that requires a special skill,
A very special set
I've
of
heard
skills.
these stories where actors will write down, diving, horseback riding, blah blah blah, basketball. And have you ever do you ever need them to prove that skill, or is it just sort of those ones you take? Because I can imagine some people get themselves into quite the predicament when they claim to do something and then they don't.
Yeah, I can't wait for you to your answer, Shelly.
It's true. I remember a project that I heard about, and I almost caught it twice from happening, but like I caught it beforehand because I'd heard of the disaster it caused, and then always asked the question again. So again, learning every time you're doing something. And the role was for a character who drives around town looking for trouble, ends up connecting with friends, they cause some stuff, and then they drive away at the end of it. The person came in for the audition, they nailed it, they get to set, and the person says, "Oh, I just need to take a copy of your driver's license." And they say, "Well, I don't have a driver's license." You don't have a driver's license. They end up having on the fly switch where the characters were sitting in the car, which, people have storyboarded this out. There's different, the color of the car maybe on this side is this, the wardrobe has been picked out for that piece. So the crew had to kind of like prepare at the very last minute, like, holy crap, we got to like change this up. So, the next time somebody's coming, well, we know this character needs to drive. Do you drive? No? Okay. You should probably read for this part or read for that part. We've had like background people where we've had kids riding with bicycles in the background up to a school while the characters in the front talking. You don't want those kids falling on their bike in the background because they've never been on a bike, even though they own a bike. And
This is the one, Lori Loughlin in Rad, being a BMX freestyler. This is the one that made me think of it. I'm pretty sure she never rode a bike before this movie.
Yeah, and the bike's probably like still she's acting the part, which is great. But we've had skateboarders who are interacting with characters. Is that skateboarding?
No, this is her doing a trick, but it's obvious that there's a male stand-in for her when you watch the movie.
Yeah, so crazy.
And I imagine it happens with, I heard somebody saying, oh, these guys are playing basketball and it's for like a big show. And the guy does the role. I think I heard this on Dax's podcast, actually, Mike. And the guy goes to do it. It was a well-known actor now. I can't remember off the top of my head, but he had never actually played basketball. And they want him to sit there and shoot shots. And he didn't know how to play basketball. And he thought, well, when's anybody going to call me on that?
Yeah. Well, that's the truth, though. Like any actor who's putting down any special skills we're constantly looking at those special skills. Like I've had to, look for gymnasts of a certain age, like 9 to 13, where they had to be at a provincial level 3.
Oh wow.
So anytime I'm on a sports movie or anything like that, I ask, what is the level that the characters are on? It was for an American Girl movie that was here. So we ended up going to all the different gymnastics clubs. We went to about 12 or 13 clubs. We ended up pulling some of the best ones out for the photo doubles because the actors needed some scenes where, they're doing triple backflips. Like some of these little girls they're actresses, and they have the physique and different things to pass for it, but not the skill set. Same with a figure skating movie. We had to have it was like one of the highest levels of that age group for figure skating, because often they're doubling the lead characters because they're not actual figure skaters, but the figure skaters wouldn't be able to pull off the acting role because they're not actors. So again, it's this collaboration and consulting and bottle doubling and special skilled extras. So then from those, like for instance, the gymnastics groups, the big end scene was 8 or 9 different teams at this provincial, or I guess it was this state, so it would be state
State.
level. And they were all doing different things. So we were able to incorporate a lot of these girls that might not have had the exact skill that we needed for the lead actors, but because they could do this, that, or the other thing, we had 9 different costumes for each of the teams, excuse me, and then they were all able to still be in the movie in some level. Had those girls said, "Oh yeah, I'm level 3," and they're coming on the day, and we put them on the beam, and they're not able to do any of these things, they're going to hurt themselves. B, they're going to be embarrassed because something's on their resume that we were told, or the parents gone along with, or the actor as adults has gone along with. They could do it. That's the last thing anybody wants, is to be asked to do something that they've never done before on camera around 100 crew members. So anybody who is putting the special skills down, if you did it 10 years ago, you need to refresh that skill because you could get for that. And if you're called in for a part to be a body double for somebody and you put this down, then the most embarrassing thing you're going to have to do is go, you know what, that was 20 years ago. I haven't done that. You need to take me out of the running. It's not necessarily going to look like you're lying, but your other credentials or things that you put down are going to be questioned. And
Well,
we don't want to just lump people going, well, we can't believe what they're going to say, because the biggest thing is we don't want anyone getting hurt. That's whether your feelings or physically getting hurt because you said that you could do something.
I love how you included your
Um,
feelings.
so yeah, we've definitely had to weed those out, but also look for very specific skill sets to play on. Like I had to look for a sign spinner one time, so I had to go drive around
oh
looking for
wow.
Little Caesars pizza guy and different things that they're doing to portray that. I believe it was in Sunnyside we did that. So Sunnyside was a series that we had to find a lot of specific skills, a lot of hipster looking people, people on bikes, people on skateboards, people with different skill sets for doing different things, all in the background, of course. But we always wanted to be accurate what people are able to do, because we don't want to put all our eggs in a basket with these 10 people. And if 8 of them are fabricating what their skill is, then it's going to make me look like a jerk to the director going, well, didn't you know that they couldn't do this? Or, just connecting with everybody and having that photographic memory, or remembering what people tell you that they're able to do. Maybe somebody, there's a great actor in the city. For a while, he never had carpentry on his skill. He's an amazing carpenter. Now he's doing things, still acting and doing different pieces. But it's like drawing the strengths and the weaknesses from everybody and building on those weaknesses and the strengths, because we're all capable of doing that. And if anybody's in the industry to be creative, then they're going to go along with that. And if they don't, they're going to easily weed themselves out of the process.
What you, our listeners wouldn't see the video, but this is my Doctor Evil audition. How would I?
So you need to sit up more straight. Your clothing should be different.
Hmm.
Yeah, there you go. You're in the right route now. Now build on that.
Well done, Mark. Well done. As every episode we do with Manitoba Film Professionals, I always find that they're pretty much guaranteed for 2 parts, because there's so much that you've told us, and there's so much more that I haven't even had a chance to ask you. And time is not on our side today. Unfortunately, there was a little bit of a hiccup in my schedule. So, and I do want to cover some things before we let you go. One is a surprise I didn't tell you about, but I assure you it's fun. So don't worry. I'm not going to ask you anything that you don't want to answer. And by not answering might be an answer. But because I'm through work an on-screen member, you're an on-screen member, on-screen Manitoba, you would be a better person to talk about them than I would. I know what they do in my world, but for Manitoba film professionals, an easy way I guess I could explain it is it's a group for Manitoba film professionals to get together, and it's a committee, it's a group, it's an advocacy. It strengthens Manitoba film. It makes sure that what's done here is respected and known about and shared. And most importantly, it showcases the fantabulous talent that exists in this province, like Shelly. In keeping with that theme, I refer to Manitoba as Little Hollywood. That's my moniker for it, because it's slowly becoming one of the most known spots, if not in Canada, in North America, to come do film. Like Netflix picks us, Amazon picks us. Watching this happen and being proxy to it through my day job is a blessing, because it's made my day job umpteen times more interesting than it ever was, because now I get to have these weird set conversations and be like, so what's this thing doing? And then I get to know about it. I'm like, what's the special effect? Like, that's super fun to have someone call you and be like, I need a cement mixer because we got to fill a pit to make people, not sink in it. And I'm like, okay, let's do this. Anyways, what is so great about working in Manitoba Film, Shelly?
Well, I think for me, because a lot of people have thought, oh, well, you've done this, you've done that, you're part of the union, so you're going to move away now and go work somewhere else, right? So you're working all the time or do more writing and directing and everything. And I'm like, no. If I do that, I'm literally going to have to start over again to prove myself to another industry somewhere else. I mean, of course, my resume is built up quite a bit more since I first got into film. But Manitoba is unique because you can still kind of do part-time work if you're not working full-time, and if you're trying to break into the industry. There's a really great opportunity. The cost of living is amazing. So if you're in timeouts or productions aren't coming through, I mean, I didn't work for 8 months this year. That's the longest I've ever not worked since I was, 13 years old when I got my first job. And it was, holy crow, are we ever going to work again? And my first thought was, I'm so glad I don't live somewhere else paying, $1,000, $2,000 a month to live, or not having the safety net of like On-Screen Manitoba, of Film Training Manitoba, of IATSE, of the Directors Guild, of the community as a whole. Anybody who's new wanting to come into film, we're all a safety net of, we've done it before, we don't want you to fail. So I think Winnipeg has a very interesting, like almost like within mentorships of the different people and layers that you can connect with in the community. I think trying to do that anywhere else is really difficult because you're vastly outnumbered. I'm probably one of, I'll say overall, the people who are scouting in the city, maybe one of a dozen people who are able to scout. If that was Toronto, that'd probably be a pool of 100 scouts.
Wow.
If it was Vancouver, there's probably 150 scouts. So in preparation for today, I was kind of looking back of how many projects I've worked on, and I was like, wow, I can't believe I've worked on all of these things. If I'd lived in a different city, I feel like the prime time for opportunity wouldn't be there as much. I'm not from Winnipeg. I grew up in Barrie, Ontario. I lived in Vancouver for a year. I got stuck out in a farmhouse out here meeting friends. I was 17 years old. I turned 18 here. I fell into property management. I've fallen into film and just love it after working in the medical industry for a while. And I think even if I was getting the opportunity to write and direct and having to go somewhere else, I think that's just the thing that you do when you live in Winnipeg. If you're part of Winnipeg and you're here, then it's like feast or famine, adapt or not. And so I feel living here, there's a lot more opportunities that I would not have had anywhere else. I wouldn't be where I am in my career. I feel very well supported with the people that I've connected through casting, my producing, my own writing and directing, working in different, I do a lot of like philanthropy, work in the city, and some of that I've initiated and I've drawn on my networking. It's always about the networking, but I'm a very outgoing, friendly person. So for me, it works. for somebody else it might not work, but for me personally, I feel very nurtured and supported, and I feel like I've learned so much from the community. I'm always looking at giving back. I'm always looking at helping to teach the next person. Somebody asked me for something, a panel I was on recently, like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I was like, hopefully doing the same thing or teaching the next generation of filmmakers that are coming up. We are the safety net. We are here to help and watch you succeed. And we definitely, I know I want to be a part of that. When I was coming up into it, it was always, oh, I don't want to teach you this or teach you that. Some people just didn't want to for fear that I was trying to take something away from them. And that's not how it is. You either jive with a group or you don't. I've had to leave a show with the producer's blessing going, you know what, they're having a really difficult time with somebody on this end of it. We really feel like you're the person that needs to step into this role. And then from there, it's just advanced my opportunities and to be able to give back and share that with somebody else that sometimes you need to be transparent with your producers and ask for different opportunities, or they're going to come to you and you need to be open to the possibility of, I call it being hockey traded to somewhere else because people know you and like people know me, they know my skill set, they know I'm diverse. And sometimes I've been that troubleshooter that they've called in specifically because a lot of crew will just work in one vein and stay in that vein. Others that are writing and producing and directing have the ability to kind of move sideways between these things, but then, oh, I'm here now. This is what I'm doing. And I think Winnipeg has been a really good breeding ground for that to happen for a lot of us.
You've said about 17 of the same things that everybody I've asked that question to, and it essentially comes down to a really great community of people now that like to educate and learn, soak up knowledge, make fun shit, do awesome things, meet great people. Like it really is, and I don't, I'm proxy to it, so I'm not in it per se, but I've seen and heard and watched enough of it that it is really it's nothing like you'd get in the big metropolitans. You wouldn't get this in Toronto, like you said. You wouldn't get this in Vancouver. This isn't LA whatsoever. Like it's very, and like because it's so tight, it almost is self-perpetuating in that don't mess around, don't ruin it, right? There's a reason people now see you guys as a mecca to come make film here. There's a talent pool to pull from that is deep and full of skills. So you are very protective of it, yet at the same time you are very nurturing inside of it, which is kind of an anomaly unto itself, right? But
it's true, and it's a very small community. People can burn themselves out pretty quickly, and it's a small community, but it's a very nurturing community. And yeah, everything you said is pretty accurate and why I've stayed. I worked on a really tough project nearly 5 years ago, and I was fired. I've never been fired from a job before. It was totally devastating. I was in a position that was something different, that the project started out small. In the middle of me starting it and being kind of knee deep into it, a huge injection of money was inserted into the feature film, which anybody who is a seasoned person would have had a difficult time keeping up. And it was really hard for me to concede, like, I've been fired. Like, I've built up so much of my reputation. Nobody's ever going to hire me again. I was really, really devastated. And I thought, shit, why did I try something that maybe I wasn't ready for? Or sometimes it's just personalities don't mix. And so I remember my family saying, so like you're going to come back now, right? Like you're going to leave now, come back home. And I was like, no, I'm going to wait for the next call and hope it comes. Like if it doesn't, then obviously I'm meant to close this door and go kick down another.
There it is.
Whatever it ends up being. Maybe I just don't do that job again. But I did fall into that department again. And now I've been there for the past 5 years. And so I've had such amazing experiences since then. Had I left Winnipeg, I would have started out as a production assistant somewhere else and might not have kept going with film just because it would have just been so daunting doing the last 15 years of building up that reputation and rapport and networking with everyone, and having to start over was just such a scary thought. I thought, nope, I gotta go out with a stiff upper lip and keep paying the union dues and just, with a heartfelt feeling like this is going to pan out. I've put far too much of myself and my creativity, and I know this is where I need to be. And maybe I don't need to go kick down another door. I just need to go try a different door handle. It's going to be okay. So just being able to adapt. And I think
Yeah.
Winnipeggers are known for their adaptiveness, I think, for sure. So
Yeah.
Before we get too far along, Mike and,
Yeah.
Shelly, what sort of stuff can our listeners and us check out some of your works? What's some of your recent stuff that we can look you up in?
yeah, for
Either
sure.
through
So
all different roles.
well, there's always something going on in Shelly Anthis's world. I'm currently in a baking competition to be the greatest baker, to be in a magazine spread. So I was out of 35 bakers, I made the top 10. Now I'm vying for the top 5. So if you go check out the Great Baker, just Google me, or like you can search my name, sorry, and it's Shelly Anthis, and then a plethora of photos of my cakes that I've worked on will come up. I fell into doing a lot of cake baking, which I learned doing a part-time job when I was like 15, 16 years old. And with the COVID initial lockdown, I was able to go, oh yeah, I know how to bake professional cakes. And so I had a few fundraisers where I was able to raise some money for a few inner city projects, for Laura Ray's Pantry project, as well as the West Central Community Women's Resource Center for various items they were giving out to their clients. And I'm gearing up for the 3rd year as head elf of the Santa Brian Toys for Santa, which will be turned into a raffle, which gives a lot back to many teens and kids who otherwise wouldn't have anything for Christmas. So those are kind of ongoing. But right now I am the location scout, which is now winding down. So it's more assistant location managing work on Burden of Truth. I've been working on season 4. I'm like the new stepchild to the family because I didn't work on the previous seasons. So that's been
A fresh
fun
eye.
and exciting. And yeah, exactly. And just being part of something that's so well established. I'll knock on someone's door and I'll say, hi, I'm Shelly from Burden of Truth. They're like, come in. What do you need? Like, you need the shirt off our back? We'll give it to you. Like, what do the characters need from us? And there's a lot of Selkirkians who are a part of making Millwood what it is. And I've been working on a sketch comedy series, writing that with a few comics who live out of town. So looking forward to putting up a sketch comedy series maybe by next summer. And then my short film, somewhere in September, just wound down. We were on a festival circuit there for a couple of years. So if you look up somewhere in September.ca, you'll be able to see a lot of local actors. I wrote, directed, and produced that. And
We'll get
I
Mike to
recently
include some of
produced
these
Heidi
links.
Phillips. Yeah. And recently I just produced Heidi Phillips' What If? Heidi Phillips' To Wait. It's a film that she made. We actually shot on 16 millimeter and 8 millimeter film and
Wow.
Super 8. We did that throughout the summer. So that's in editing right now. And yeah, if you join Extras Casting Winnipeg, which is the page that I manage and post a lot of crew opportunities, a lot of extras casting opportunities. We have nearly 8,000 people follow our page. And so that's a really good resource to tap into that. And
That's your Facebook page, correct?
It is, yeah. Yeah, so we've had that on, I think that's been up now for about 5 or 6 years. And so we'll always post a lot of items from other casting directors and extras casting directors who are looking to cast roles or background. So just stay tuned to that page. There's crew opportunities and any of my crazy antics or fundraising things I'm up to will always get posted there as well to share with my network of folks there.
I got to admit, around our house, baking competition shows are kind of a guilty pleasure.
Yeah.
Nice.
Mine too.
Please
We
check
watch.
out my cakes.
Yeah. Well,
The
Absolutely.
top voting is up November 12th. So
Shelly, you can send me all of this because you get a guest profile with this, and I feel that you will fill it until it's overflowing with cake or otherwise.
it will.
So I'll get all of that stuff and we'll put it all up there because those are some great causes. And who doesn't love an elf? Seriously, you have no heart if you don't love an elf. So that's awesome. So thank you for doing that, Mark, because that was in the back of my mind, and we both know it would have been forgotten. So kudos to Mark for remembering what Mike always forgets. I get to do the fun stuff now. So Shelly, did you ever watch when it was on the Inside the Actors Studio?
Oh, a little bit.
Okay, so
See, a lot of times I'm so busy making content and working on projects.
Yep.
There's a long period of time where I didn't really watch a lot, but I am familiar with it.
Okay, perfect. So James Lipton used to have a set of 10 questions he asked everybody at the end of the show. These are the 10 questions I'm going to ask you because nobody has sued me yet. Since he's passed away, he can't ask them anymore. The show is no longer on TV, so I feel until I get a phone call, this will be our new game. We've done it with everybody. You're going to carry the torch. So let me get the questions up here because I need to use my face to
Am I
unlock.
supposed to answer these really quickly? Is that how it goes?
Well, quick and they're
They're
not
rapid
quick
fire
fire. They're rapid in sense that I'll ask them and hope for the quickest response, but you don't have to do like first or second thing that pops in your head. Okay. So first question: what's your favorite word?
Diversity, like being versatile.
Okay. All right. So diversity. Check. Yeah. Perfect. Okay. What's your least favorite word?
Can't.
Ah.
Yeah. I hate that. I can't do this. I can't do that. I know I'm guilty of saying it, but
Well, yeah, no,
anything's possible.
it's when it comes to a challenge, I feel it's the worst response. I can't. If someone's like, I bet you can't do that. And then if you agree with them, yeah, but like, I can't make it on time. That's okay. Right. Or I can't let you leave the house wearing that shirt. That's fine. But like, I can't do that. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. What turns you on creatively or spiritually or emotionally?
just being creative, constantly being creative, doing something, working on something.
What's the turn off to that?
Being like, I think you become stagnant if you're not always doing something. So like my whole life, I was just constantly looking to the next adventure, to the next thing.
What is your favorite curse word?
The F word. And sometimes I mutter under my breath, or I catch myself saying it, and I'm like, I just said that a lot. Stop that.
That's the mom in you right there,
It
the
was
F word. What sound or noise do you love?
Like lots of water. Like I go to a campsite in Beausejour, and that's my calming thing, just to go listen to water, connect back with nature.
Is that at Broken Head?
Yes.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
used to
it's
live in
great.
Beausejour as a kid.
I was gonna expect her to say something like buttercream icing being blended.
It's funny. I thought of the mixer, but I was like, that's gonna sound crazy.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Oh, sorry, what sound and noise?
Do you hate?
Yeah.
For ladies and gentlemen, Mark just
That's
brought out his
awesome.
mixer.
I want one of those.
Oh, that's such a tease. You just teased a professional baker with a KitchenAid mixer. You're such a dick. All right. Okay.
It's funny that I just happen to have a stand mixer sitting next to me.
That's so funny. What are you doing with your stand mixer in your office?
Okay. What sound or noise do you hate?
You're on a baking show, aren't you?
It's a secret show that I'm running.
Okay. One more time.
I
What-
do some baking ASMR in my spare time.
Nice.
Okay. All right. What sound or noise do you hate?
Probably like people in pain or like groaning, kind of, yeah,
Okay.
things
All right.
like that.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Can I say baking?
Yes. Of course.
No.
No.
Okay.
You can't. You can't.
My profession that like I would like to do other than filmmaking?
Yeah.
Maybe like a career counselor. I think I would be good with that.
Okay.
Maybe I'd be the person giving the teenagers the test and giving them a hard line of a path
Ah.
to take in life and not be so wishy-washy.
Yeah.
Or letting them embrace that.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that. What profession would you not like to do?
I would not want to be a what's the word? What's the opposite of gynecologist? I can't believe I was like, a study
Proctologist.
assistant for that. The opposite for men, like I
Proctologist.
wouldn't want to do that. Urology. That's
Oh,
what it is.
urology.
I wouldn't want to go back to that. I had to wash a lot of different instruments and be part of a lot of procedures, and I would not want to go back to
I
that.
was going to say proctology.
Yeah, there was some of that involved. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. That's a new one. That one's going up on the wall for sure. Okay, last question before we get you out of here. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
What would I want him to say to me?
Yeah.
Some people have been here waiting for you.
That's a good one. Right this way.
I was thinking back to your earlier answer. You should have took a left instead of the right.
Yeah, well, that's what I was thinking. That I would want him to say to me. I think if you were to say, what would you not want him to say? I'm sorry, you're at the wrong place. Although I'm sure there's people probably waiting for me in both that I would be happy to see. So.
We know Shelly would just kick down the door, though, anyways.
Yeah,
So.
exactly.
Yeah.
All right, Shelly, this has been a pleasure and an education, which I hope it always is for not only us, but for you as well, too.
Oh, definitely.
I am going to extend you an invite because we didn't even talk locations, and I feel locations is just as important as casting. So we'll make a round 2 of this for sure because it's COVID. We got a lot. Well, you're working, which is fucking great. I'm so glad you guys are back at work. And
Me too. I'm looking forward to a break, though. I have about a month left, and it'll be nice to have a break. I started the show just like right after the August long weekend.
Yep.
And so I feel like my house is calling me to get caught up on some chores and late spring cleaning.
We need all of you guys working, though, because now that everybody's consuming so much more media, now that everybody's stuck at home, they're running out of programs and shows to watch.
Exactly.
It's true. I think it's going to be a busy winter overall, which will be good. So it's always nice to have like a few weeks off between projects. Like I find I can get a lot done during then. But if I ended up being off until next year, I'd be okay with that too, because I have some writing and some other creative content to create as well. So
I actually wanted to tell you, I forgot to tell you this. I went to school with Peter Mooney we were in band class together. And I know
say that again, sorry?
Peter Mooney, who plays the lead in Burden of Truth.
Oh, you guys went to school with each other?
Yes, we were in the same band class together. And I remember when his first commercial, he did was where he was a younger brother to a guy who was trying to be all cool in a drinking and driving commercial, and the only he tried to sit in the front, and the only recognition he got was his older brother was like, "Geek in the back," and then he kicked him into the back seat and let the girl come in. So if you ever see Peter in the next couple of weeks, which I'm sure you will, just walk up to him and say "Geek in the back" and see if he remembers it. I'm sure he won't, but it was everybody at school was like, "Ah, it's Peter. He's in a commercial," and we were all like losing our shit over it. It was pretty funny. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
See, anywhere else in a bigger city, you wouldn't have had that connection or that happen, most likely.
No.
Sometimes, though, I guess it depends where you are.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, depends how big of a deal you are. Anyways, Shelly, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes,
it's been really great. Thank you so much.
It's been amazing. So nice to meet you.
We are thankful for your time, and I will be in touch with you. Have a great rest of your weekend and stay safe.
You too. See you guys.
Bye.